There is a motorcycle platform that has almost certainly outsold everything Harley-Davidson ever made, combined. Every Sportster, every Road King, every Fat Boy that has rolled out of Milwaukee in the last 120 years. All of it. And this one bike family still wins. It costs under $1,000. It makes 11 horsepower. And chances are, you have never even seen one in person. But here is the wild part. In Pakistan, it is the most recognizable vehicle on the road. In Brazil, Honda's Manaus factory rolls a motorcycle off the line every 19 seconds. In Nigeria, the CG125 design became one of the foundations of an entire motorcycle taxi economy. This single motorcycle platform has moved more human beings from point A to point B than almost any vehicle ever made. So why did America, the country that literally invented motorcycle culture, completely ignore it? The answer involves broken cam chains in Thailand, a $5 million ad campaign that backfired in the best way possible, a tariff signed by Ronald Reagan, and an uncomfortable truth about what Americans are actually paying for when they walk into a motorcycle dealership. This is the story of the Honda CG125, the most important motorcycle you have never heard of. It started with a month of broken motorcycles. In May of 1974, Honda engineer Takeshi Inagaki and designer Inosuke Miyachi packed their bags and flew to Southeast Asia. They spent a full month traveling across Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Iran, and Pakistan. Honda had sent them to figure out why their motorcycles kept dying in these markets, and what they found was brutal. Riders in these countries were performing almost zero preventive maintenance. Oil that should have been changed every few thousand kilometers had turned into sludge. Paper air filters had basically become solid walls of dirt. Honda's overhead cam engines, the ones with the cam chain running through the top of the motor, were suffering catastrophic failures because those chains and camshaft bearings wore out incredibly fast without proper lubrication. Now, the typical corporate response would have been to educate these riders about maintenance. Run a campaign, print some manuals, maybe train local mechanics. Inagaki did the opposite. He said, if these riders will not maintain the engine, we will build an engine that does not need to be maintained. And that decision changed everything. The engineering solution was deliberately backwards. Instead of the more advanced overhead cam design, Inagaki went with a pushrod OHV system using a gear-driven camshaft. No cam chain to fail, no tensioner to adjust. He moved the critical lubrication points closer to the oil pump so that even with neglected, barely functional oil, the engine would survive. He replaced the disposable paper air filter with a washable foam element. He fully enclosed the drive chain to protect it from dust and debris. When a prototype was demonstrated in Thailand in December of 1974, local mechanics who had never seen the engine before were able to completely disassemble and reassemble the top end in 20 minutes. And it started on the first kick. The trade-off was intentional. The new CG125 made just 11 horsepower from its 124 cubic centimeter single-cylinder engine. Honda's existing CB125 with the overhead cam made 14. They chose durability over performance on purpose. Air-cooled single-cylinder, 4-speed manual transmission, kickstart only, drum brakes front and rear, and a dry weight of just 209 pounds. Fuel economy sat around 106 miles per gallon. Top speed was roughly 62 to 71 miles per hour, though real-world comfortable cruising was closer to 50 to 60. Think about that design philosophy for a second. Honda, a company that was winning Grand Prix races and pushing the boundaries of engine technology, deliberately went backwards. They took a simpler, older engine architecture and optimized it not for speed or performance, but for survival. For the ability to keep running when everything around it falls apart. In a world obsessed with more horsepower, more technology, more features, Honda looked at the data and said, you know what these riders actually need? Less. Less complexity, less maintenance, less cost. And they were spectacularly right. The Honda CG125 went on sale in Thailand in March of 1975. Brazilian production started in October of 1976, and it has been in continuous production in various markets around the world for over 50 years. In 2026, Honda Brazil is celebrating the CG line's 50th anniversary with a special edition in retro gold paint. That is not a typo. 50 years. Same basic concept. Now here is where the numbers get absolutely insane. In Pakistan, Atlas Honda, their local manufacturing partner, has long dominated the motorcycle market, consistently holding a clear majority of domestically assembled motorcycle sales. In recent years, their share among official manufacturers has climbed above 80% in some months. Pakistan has tens of millions of motorcycles on its roads right now, and the vast majority are 70 cubic centimeters or 125 cubic centimeters bikes. The CG125 is not just transportation there, it is a cultural institution. Mechanics in markets from Bilal Ganj in Lahore to Sadar in Karachi know this engine the way American mechanics know a Chevy small block. Every single part is available everywhere. Used CG125s tend to hold their value unusually well, and riders widely regard them as far longer lasting than cheaper Chinese alternatives. At under $1,000 for a brand new one at recent exchange rates, it is the most rational purchase in Pakistani transportation. And keep in mind, for many buyers, a CG125 still represents a major purchase relative to monthly wages. That sounds like a lot until you realize what it gives you. Economic mobility, the ability to commute to a job you could not reach by foot, the ability to carry goods to market, the ability to move your family. In a country where public transportation infrastructure is limited and a car costs 10 to 20 times more, the CG125 is not a motorcycle. It is an economic ladder. But Pakistan is not even the craziest part of this story. That would be Brazil. Honda opened a factory in Manaus, Brazil in 1976 with 276 workers, producing just 2,200 motorcycles that first year. Within a year, Honda had become the dominant force in Brazilian motorcycling. Today, that same Manaus factory produces roughly one motorcycle every 19 seconds. Let that number actually register for a second. One bike, every 19 seconds. Rolling off the line. Honda reached 30 million cumulative motorcycles produced in Brazil in October of 2024. The 30 millionth was a CG160 Titan. The CG line alone, according to Honda Brazil, has now surpassed 15 million units. And in 2025, the CG160 represented 22% of every single motorcycle sold in the country, with nearly 268,000 units registered in just 7 months. That one model outsold the Fiat Strada, which is Brazil's best-selling car. Honda commands roughly 2/3 of Brazil's motorcycle market, a share that used to be closer to 80% and is still far ahead of second-place Yamaha. The CG is the essential tool for millions of motoboys, the motorcycle couriers and delivery riders who run 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of them put punishing mileage on these bikes, and the CG's reputation for durability is a major reason they keep buying them. And in Nigeria and across West Africa, the Honda CG125 became the template for Okada motorcycle taxis. The word Okada was literally added to the Oxford English Dictionary in January 2020. Now, genuine Hondas are considered premium products in Nigeria, but the CG125 design was copied so extensively by Chinese manufacturers that the clones dominate the market. Chinese factories produce roughly 20 million motorcycles a year, and they exported nearly 4 million of them to Africa in 2024 alone, a number that is growing fast. Across West Africa, imported Chinese CG-style bikes arrive in shipping containers, get assembled by local workers in open-air workshops, and ship out across the region on overloaded trucks. A brand new Chinese CG clone sells for under $500 in coastal West Africa. It will not last as long as a real Honda. But when your alternative is walking 8 kilometers to work in the heat, $500 for a few years of mobility is a bargain you take without thinking twice. Meanwhile, in Vietnam, Honda holds over 80% market share. Entire streets in Ho Chi Minh City are rivers of Honda scooters and small displacement motorcycles bumper to bumper, flowing like water through intersections. In Indonesia, the largest Southeast Asian market moves 5.5 million motorcycles annually. In India, the world's largest two-wheeler market sells roughly 18 million units per year. Honda's DNA runs through all of it. Different model names, the Wave, the Super Cub, the Activa scooter, the Shine 125. but the same core philosophy: affordable, bulletproof, fuel-efficient, easy to repair. So let us talk about the elephant in the room, or really, the elephant versus the mouse. Honda sold over 20.5 million motorcycles in its fiscal year ending March 2025. That was a new all-time record. Harley-Davidson shipped about 149,000 worldwide in 2024. If you do the math, that is roughly 137 Honda motorcycles sold for every single Harley. Honda reached 500 million cumulative motorcycles produced in May 2025, just 76 years after the company was founded. Harley-Davidson's estimated all-time production over their entire 120-plus year history is somewhere in the range of 8 to 10 million units, though Harley has never published an official lifetime total. Honda's Super Cub alone, just one model, has passed 100 million units. That is roughly 10 to 12 times every Harley ever built. Honda's total motorcycle production in Brazil alone, at over 30 million units, exceeds all Harleys ever made by a factor of 3, and the CG family accounts for about half of that Brazilian output. If you added up the annual output of Harley-Davidson, Triumph, BMW, Ducati, and Moto Guzzi combined, you would get less than 1 million motorcycles. Honda sells 20 times that in a single year. So if the CG125 is clearly one of the most successful vehicle platforms in human history, why has America never seen one? The first wall is regulation. The United States EPA classifies the CG125 as a Class 1B motorcycle, 50 to 169 cubic centimeters, requiring full emission certification every single model year. Pakistan's version meets only Euro 2 standards, which falls far below EPA requirements. Even modernized Chinese fuel-injected versions would need separate EPA and California CARB certification. The compliance cost for testing, certification, warranty obligations, and recall liability would be prohibitive on a motorcycle that sells for under $1,000 overseas. The liability for non-compliance is serious enough to make low-cost certification economics very unattractive. Certification and compliance work alone would eat up a meaningful chunk of the margin on a bike this cheap. The second wall is infrastructure. The CG125 tops out at roughly 58 miles per hour. American highways flow at 65 to 80 miles per hour, with minimum speed limits often set at 45 to 55. The United States, built around interstate highways and wide suburban sprawl, genuinely requires more motorcycle than 11 horsepower can deliver. This is not snobbery, it is physics. You cannot safely merge onto Interstate 95 on a bike that maxes out below the speed of the surrounding traffic. But the third wall is where it gets really interesting: dealer economics. Dealers make far more gross profit, financing revenue, and accessory revenue on expensive motorcycles than on bare-bones commuters. On a hypothetical $1,500 CG125, a dealer might clear $60 to $100 per sale. On a $15,000 Harley-Davidson, that number jumps to $600 or more, plus vastly more revenue from accessories, service contracts, financing, and merchandise. A $1,500 commuter generates almost zero accessory sales. Buyers pay cash, so there is no financing opportunity. And it occupies the same floor space and demands the same sales staff time as a bike worth 10 times more. No rational dealer would stock it. The math simply does not work. And this is something people outside the industry never think about. The American motorcycle dealership model is built around high-ticket transactions. The showroom, the parts department, the service bays, the merchandise wall of t-shirts and leather jackets. All of that overhead gets supported by selling bikes in the $10,000 to $30,000 range. You cannot sustain a dealership on $60 margins. You would need to sell 50 CG125s to make the same gross profit as selling 3 Harleys. And those 3 Harleys each come with a customer who is going to spend another $2,000 to $5,000 on accessories, gear, and extended service plans over the next 2 years. The CG125 customer shows up, pays cash, and you never see them again. That is a death sentence for a dealership business model. And then there is licensing. Unlike the United Kingdom and Europe, where graduated licensing systems restrict new riders to 125 cubic centimeters and create a captive market for small bikes, the United States has no displacement restrictions whatsoever. An 18-year-old American with a motorcycle license can immediately ride a 1,800 cubic centimeter Harley. There is no regulatory pathway that normalizes small displacement motorcycles as a stage in learning to ride. But honestly, the cultural dimension runs deeper than any of that. Honda actually cracked the American market in the 1960s with small bikes. The legendary "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda" campaign was one of the most successful advertising pushes in automotive history. American Honda's chief Kihachiro Kawashima invested $5 million, which was enormous for that era, and made Honda the first foreign company to advertise on the Academy Awards broadcast in 1964, spending $300,000 for a spot seen by 80% of US television viewers. Annual Honda sales in America surged from 40,000 to 200,000 units, a 500% increase. That campaign accelerated the collapse of British motorcycle dominance in the American market. But here is the irony. Honda opened the American market with small, approachable, friendly motorcycles, and then watched as American culture demanded bigger and bigger machines. The campaign faded by 1966, replaced by new messaging as Honda introduced the CB350, the CB450, and eventually the CB750-4, the inline four-cylinder that basically rewrote the rules of what a production motorcycle could be. Harley-Davidson responded to Japanese competition not with better engineering, but with political protection. By the early 1980s, Harley's share of the large displacement market had collapsed from 100% down to under 15%. In September of 1982, Harley petitioned the International Trade Commission for help, and on April 15, 1983, the President of the United States signed Presidential Proclamation 5050, slapping a 45% tariff on top of the existing 4.4% rate on all imported motorcycles over 700 cubic centimeters. The Japanese responded brilliantly. Kawasaki shrank the KZ750 down to a 694 cubic centimeters engine to duck under the limit. Honda and Kawasaki shifted production to American plants. And here is the part nobody talks about. In March of 1987, Harley made the unprecedented request for early termination of the tariff. Chief Executive Officer Von Beals declared they no longer needed tariff relief to compete. Academic research later published in the Journal of International Economics found the tariffs only explained about 6% of Harley's recovery. The real transformation was internal restructuring and quality improvements. As Beals himself eventually admitted, for years they tried to figure out why the Japanese were beating them, blaming culture, automation, and dumping. And then they finally realized the problem was themselves. Think about how wild that admission is. One of the most iconic American brands spent years pointing fingers at foreign competition, getting the President of the United States to sign tariffs, and then their own chief executive officer came out and basically said, yeah, the problem was us all along. The Japanese were just better at building motorcycles. We had to get our own house in order. That is a level of honesty you almost never see from corporate America. Today, Harley-Davidson operates as what their own leadership has called a lifestyle brand. Not a motorcycle company, not a transportation company, a lifestyle company. The Harley Owners Group has grown to over 1 million members. Harley's brand licensing alone has generated over $40 million in revenue. The motorcycle functions in America as an identity product, an expression of freedom, rebellion, and individualism, not transportation. And this brings us to the uncomfortable truth about what Americans actually pay for. The average American motorcycle purchase now sits at roughly $12,000, a number that has surged over 40% since 2020. The median US motorcycle buyer is now over 50 years old, experienced, higher income, and shopping for premium products. Meanwhile, a Honda CG125 in Pakistan costs under $1,000 US. The cheapest real motorcycle Honda sells in the US, the Navi at $2,099, is still more than double the price of a Pakistani CG125. And the gap between the CG125 and that American price breaks down like this. Emissions compliance adds several $100s. Safety equipment like ABS and DOT lighting adds more. Mandatory fuel injection, regulatory certification, dealer network overhead, and liability infrastructure all pile on. And in 2025, U.S. trade policy added fresh tariff uncertainty for imported goods across the board, with layered duties from multiple authorities hitting motorcycles from different countries at different rates, making the economics of a bargain-priced commuter bike even harder to justify. The operating costs tell the same story. The CG125 gets 106 miles per gallon. A typical US mid-size motorcycle gets 35 to 55 miles per gallon. Annual maintenance on a CG125 in Pakistan runs about $18 to $36. An entry-level American bike costs $400 to $800 per year. A Harley-Davidson runs $1,000 to $2,000 or more. And US motorcycle insurance averages $364 to $571 annually, while in Pakistan, basic coverage runs $11 to $18 a year. And this is really the core of it all. Honda does not operate one motorcycle business. It operates two completely different businesses under one name. Of Honda's roughly 20 million annual sales, 85% come from Asia. Japan, Europe, and the US combined account for just 6%. The US market, at roughly 500,000 to 600,000 total new registrations from all brands, represents less than 3% of global motorcycle volume. But it commands premium pricing that makes it worth cultivating as a high-margin luxury segment. Honda manufactures motorcycles at 37 facilities across 23 countries, tailoring products for each regional reality. In Brazil, they built a full factory. For emerging markets like Kenya, Honda developed the KDP system, a minimal manual assembly line that can operate in a rented warehouse with just 3 to 4 workers pushing motorcycles through stages by hand, scalable from near 0 to 200 units per day. Scalable. And there is one more detail that tells you just how dominant the CG125 design became. The counterfeiting problem. The CG125 was so successful that Chinese manufacturers copied it wholesale. One manufacturer alone, a company called Sundero, was producing roughly 600,000 counterfeit CG125 copies every single year. Honda could have sued them into oblivion. Instead, they did something brilliant. They converted Sundero into a joint venture partner called Sundero Honda, bringing the counterfeiter inside the tent rather than fighting an unwinnable legal battle in Chinese courts. If you cannot beat the people copying you, make them work for you. That is a level of strategic thinking that goes way beyond just building a good motorcycle. And maybe the most telling number in this entire story is this one. The overwhelming majority of motorcycles sold worldwide are small displacement machines, under 250 cubic centimeters. In Southeast Asia, 125 cubic centimeters and below dominates. In India, the vast majority of 28 million annual sales are under 150 cubic centimeters. Meanwhile, the US market is centered on 400 to 800 cubic centimeter machines. These are two completely different industries that happen to share a name. The US motorcycle market was valued at $8.9 billion in 2024. Roughly 5% of the $178 billion global market, despite representing only 2 to 3% of unit volume. Americans pay roughly $12,000 per motorcycle versus a global average of about $3,000 to $3,500. There are approximately 700 million motorcycles and scooters in operation worldwide. The United States has about 8.8 million, that is 1.3%, and US riders average fewer than 3,000 miles per year, using their machines primarily for weekend recreation rather than daily transportation. We are a rounding error in the global motorcycle conversation, spending 4 times the global average per bike, riding a fraction of the miles, and somehow convinced we are the center of motorcycle culture. So the Honda CG125 did not fail in America. It was never meant for America. Honda looked at a country where motorcycles are weekend toys, where highways demand high horsepower, where dealers need high margins to survive, and where brand identity matters more than fuel economy, and they said this market does not need a sub-$1,000 commuter. And they were right. But here is what keeps me up at night about this whole thing. American motorcycle culture is what the world sees in movies, in advertising, in media. The leather jackets, the chrome, the open highway, the rumble of a V-twin at a stoplight. That image has almost nothing to do with what motorcycling actually is for the vast majority of riders on Earth. We exported an entire mythology about what a motorcycle is supposed to be. And in doing so, we made it almost impossible for our own market to accept what a motorcycle actually does best for billions of people. For most of the world, a motorcycle is how you get to work, how you feed your family, how you move goods across a city that has no subway and no bus system. And the Honda CG family, this humble, small displacement, sub-$1,000 platform, has done more of that everyday transportation work than almost any motorcycle in history. There is a street in Lahore, Pakistan, where you can hear the distinctive exhaust note of the CG125 from every direction. There is a delivery rider in Sao Paulo, Brazil, who has put 150,000 kilometers on his CG160, and the engine has never been opened. There is a motorcycle taxi driver in Lagos, Nigeria, riding a Chinese copy of a design Honda perfected in 1975, and that copy still works because the original engineering was that good. None of these riders care about chrome. None of them care about brand identity or lifestyle marketing or what the bike says about them as a person. They care about one thing: does it start, does it run, and can I afford it? And for 50 years, the Honda CG125 has answered yes to all three. Honda produces more motorcycles in a single quarter than Harley-Davidson has likely built in its entire 120-year history. That single fact tells you everything about the gap between what Americans think motorcycling is and what motorcycling actually is for 7 billion other people. If this made you rethink what you know about the motorcycle industry, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every week, where the numbers tell a completely different story than the marketing. Now, if you want to see another example of a product that dominates globally while America completely ignores it, check out this video right here.